Welcome to the Motivated Martial Arts Podcast. Your hosts, Jackson White and Gavin Cook, have been friends and Taekwondo training partners for over 40 years. This podcast will bring you a mixture of their life stories, martial arts, and business experiences to motivate you in life and throughout your martial arts journey. Adding in a mixture of inspiring interviews and some of the best traditional martial artists around today. So over to your hosts, the Motivated Martial Artists.
This podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, skillsconnect.co.uk, the world's leading children's development program for martial arts.
If you would like to know more about what the Motivated Martial Artists have lined up for the rest of this year, come along and see us at the UK Martial Arts Show in Doncaster Dome on the 2nd and 3rd of May, where we'll be on the main stage with our US partners, Skills Worldwide. Good morning and welcome to the Motivated Martial Artists with me, Jackson White.
And me, Gavin Cook.
And today we have got an absolute legend on the podcast for you. It's Neil Adams MBE. He's been a judo practitioner for many and many years. He's been a world champion. He's competed in the Olympics. And he's here on the podcast with us this morning. Good morning, Neil.
Yes, good morning. It's a pleasure.
Good morning, Neil. Great to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I keep thinking it's an echo, but it's a nice echo, though. I'm only kidding.
Technology, it never always goes perfectly. That's what we've been finding since we first started the podcast. So we're going to kick off, Neil, and I'm going to hand you over to Gavin, really, for the first question.
Good morning, Neil. Great to have you on the show. So, first question we always ask our guests really is, just tell us a little bit about your early life and what inspired you to get into judo or into martial arts in general, and a little bit about your upbringing, really.
Well, I came from a judo family. I started when I was 7, but that was my dad was a judoka, and he was a cyclist first and foremost. But he was a judoka, and just thought that it would be a good idea to take my brother and I to this small club in Rugby to see if we liked it, and it was, we just loved it from day one, and we had a bit of a feel for it. And he took us from Rugby to a bigger club in Coventry, where that was to become my club for the rest of your life, really, because I still have association with them, and I actually ran the club for a 20-year period, as well as practiced there as a youngster. But that's how we started. We started together. So we with my brother and myself, practicing hard and trying to win tournaments as youngsters. It was quite a judo family.
Was there quite some fierce competition between you and your brother then?
No, not really. He was 3.5 years older than I was, so we were both competing at national championships and things as youngsters, as young kids. But my dad was very much into skills acquisition, so he wanted us to enjoy the sport, and he wanted us to be able to practice it properly, really. I think there's too much emphasis now at the moment on competition side.
Sure.
And really, if you have a look at it, there's probably 90% of the people practicing judo don't practice it for the competition side, but they have all other aspects of the sport that they practice it for, and it might be the physiological side of it, obviously it gets a good workout and it keeps you fit, but from the technical side, it kind of goes on and on from 6 years of age to 96. I just saw on YouTube that one of the big senseis in Japan still doing uchikomi and repetition and movement on the Kodokan mats, and he was 94 years of age. So it's one of those things that you can carry on. Yeah, it's amazing, actually. And he still had nice movement as well. It wasn't obviously intense physical exercise, but it was movement, and that was one of the main key points.
Sure. Certainly from our perspective, so I'm a Taekwondo practitioner, as is Gavin.
Yes.
And in our organisation, which was based in the Midlands, we 30,000 strong across Europe. Only 5% of those practitioners out of that 30,000 members that we have actually participate in any form of competition. So it seems there's some quite similarities with the Taekwondo or indeed any other martial art, because again, it's not just about the competition side. It's almost the way of living in your life with the martial art.
Yeah, I think that obviously the competition fanatical, and I mean that in the nicest possible way, but they are fanatical, in that they love it that much. They practice 5-6 days a week, and they, the ones that are competing at international level, that's all they're thinking about. But of course, there's a lot more to it after. I finished competition at 31 years of age. And so a lot's happened since then. There was a lot happened before I got to international level, and there's a lot happening since. So, we're very much now geared towards skills acquisition, which I was. When I went into coaching, that was one of the most important things for me, is to build good technical base and to keep the technical side of the sport at a high level. And I think that's what tends to happen if you're not careful. And you've got the same in Taekwondo. I was commentating the Taekwondo at the last Olympics. Okay. And because, of course, of the scoring, the pads are, the way that they were situated, the Taekwondo was kind of playing to where the pads were.
Sure, yeah.
And the ones that were the most sensitive, were the ones that they were aiming for, the fighters, and so kind of ruled the development.
It drives the methodology of the competitors, doesn't it? Because obviously they need to hit those targets to win, and it changes the fighting style.
Yeah, of course.
It changes the fighting style, and obviously, I had a Taekwondo guy that was commentating with me, just going nuts, really, just saying, this isn't the Taekwondo of old, and,
sure,
and so if you're not careful, you've got rules dictate development, so you need rules that are going to keep it, and as a technical, sport, but you also need it to keep its originality, and so if you're not careful, it can go somewhere else.
Yeah, most definitely.
Just sort of keeping it on the rules then, Neil. How does the scoring and the rules work? Obviously, in the Olympic judoka.
Well, basically, it's to score it on is our main thing, which is we can do by throwing somebody cleanly on their back and by arm locking, strangling for a submission, or by holding somebody down for 20 seconds. So they're the main ways that you can win. But what happens with our sport, we've got people at the moment, they're not too keen on the new development of rules, because we had to change it from leg gripping. So you can't grip below, it's very much like Greco-Roman wrestling now. You can't grip below the belt line.
Okay.
And you have to be able to throw from a technical point of view from a standing position. Now, a lot of people are not happy about that because, of course, we had a lot of cross trainers that were coming over from wrestling that were able to compete in wrestling and in judo, because they were able to dive for the legs, do a single, double leg, and then they were able to compete. But when we changed the rules, and it was unfortunately starting to go too much like wrestling, and the IOC kind of stepped in and said, well, we've got Greco and we've got freestyle, and now we've the judo looks a bit similar to that with jackets on. So one of them's going to walk from the Olympics possibly, and so put the frighteners up really. And so as a federation, the president of our federation, Marius Visa, said we've got to change it. So one way changed it was just to not allow any leg grabbing. So nobody can dive for the legs. So you've got to throw from a standing position. Ground works exactly the same, but it works slightly differently. And I think for a good reason, but some will object, but you'll always get some people objecting.
I would have thought it takes more skill to throw from the waist up,
absolutely,
than the legs.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the main point. Yeah, and that's why, when we had some people coming through saying, well, you've just taken away everything that I can do, then our argument is, then you'll have to learn how to do judo.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
All right? I'm afraid you'll have to learn how to throw somebody, because Judo Kano, when he developed judo, he developed it as an educational tool, but if you have a look at the way a lot of the techniques are, they are very much geared towards breaking of balance, and it's maximum efficiency, minimum effort is basically what it's about. But that's easier said when you've got a monster on the end of your arms that's trying to rip your arms off, But and so therefore the fundamental principles of that are correct. And if you catch somebody moving and you catch them, they say, a good little one beat a good big one. But actually that doesn't transfer really. You've got a big 7 foot, 19, 20 stone guy that's very skillful as well. Then, the smaller guy that's skillful, it isn't going to have the weight advantage, and it's going to be impossible for him. But whereas, a lot of the time we can get away with good skills differential. So if we're, quite smaller and we weigh less, if we're a middleweight, we can compete with an unskilled or not so skilled heavyweight without problems. And that looks great, doesn't it? People love that, because they see this smaller guy battling a bigger guy, but there's a skills differential.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. David and Goliath, isn't it? David and Goliath, and everyone's going to cheer for the underdog, the smaller one.
Yeah, exactly, and of course not taking the skills factor into account. So we've got some good heavyweights. We've got some very mediocre heavyweights out there on the world circuit that are fighting hard, and they look quite good, and they look the part. And then you've got some that are really skilled that are different, and it's like anything, and you can relate it to your sport. You're skilled guys, and they're head and shoulders above the others, and it's just one of those things. They're not always the hardest trainers, but they're more skilled.
Sure.
But that's another thing, isn't it? That's another another thing we could talk about.
So just take us back slightly. So we're keen to understand about your early competitions. How did you get into the competitive side of judo?
Slowly, but I just did a couple of major competitions a week. I did a lot of the competitions my dad put us in for were team matches. So we got used to the camaraderie and just the fun aspect was always there as kids. And I think we see it so much now that mad parents and mad personal coaches pushing kids too hard, too soon, and burning them out and not developing the skills, so we lose a lot of them from 15, 16 years of age, and then, sometimes they'll come back, but sometimes they don't. We lose them completely because they've had it hard, and they've been put in for every competition, sometimes 2 competitions in a weekend, and these are parents that have their own ideas on the successes of their kids.
Sure.
And I think it's pretty worrying in a lot of ways. But my dad never did that, so he developed us very slowly into the competition side. My first international tournament was when I was 16 at the Cadet European Championships in Israel, I remember, and that was the first time I ever travelled abroad. So I kind of started early but started late when it came to international competition. Right. But if you have a look at kids nowadays, a lot of them are competing internationally or going abroad when they're, 12 years of age.
Yes, yeah.
I was going to ask Neil, what's the sort of optimum age for children starting in judo? I know certainly with Taekwondo being a stand-up martial art, we can get children in quite young, even as young as 3. But obviously, judo cup, obviously involves a lot of physical grabbing and stuff like that. So what's sort of optimum time for people wanting to think about maybe starting judo as a child?
I think most kids can learn. They can learn related skills, can't they, at an early age? I mean, so you can put 4-year-olds into certain classes to learn certain things about balance and coordination skills and things like that. It's very difficult to get them to really understand something like judo, for example, before 7, 8 years of age. I'd say at 8 years of age, they're able to really grasp what it means. But before that, and we have got classes that take 5, 6-year-olds, and we've got classes that are for younger kids as well, but they're only playing games. It's all skills related,
sure.
and things that are going to help them with their judo as they start to integrate into the judo classes. So I think we've got to be, we can put the judo gis on them, can't we? We can put the gis on them and put them out there, but it's got to be, they've got to play games and they've got to enjoy what they're doing, and it's really a skills learning without them really knowing what they're doing, but then you can kind of slot them in. And I mean, for me, for my son and my 2 daughters, I put them into team, I put them into a team situation. I put them into an individual sport situation, and then I gave them a gymnastic. So my 2 girls did trampolining, and my son did a little bit of gymnastics, and it was just all for spatial awareness, sure, and for gymnastic ability and balance, and then just slotted them into different things. So two of my son and my daughter took up rugby, and my
unsurprisingly, coming from rugby, that's the least you'd expect, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, they've all done judo and they enjoy it, but it was just the way it went. Two of them are more team based, so they definitely are different to me, because I was very individual based. I didn't like to do team matches, just didn't like it. If I had to rely on somebody else, it wasn't what I wanted to do. But my son was a really good team player. My daughter is as well. My youngest daughter, very good on reading the match and very. She's not greedy at all, and my son was the same. He wasn't greedy with the ball. He was always played to the team, whereas I'd get it and I'd run with it and wouldn't give it away.
Yeah, I had exactly the same problem. That's why I was always put on the wing.
It's a different mentality, and I guess you don't know which way you're going to slot in, but it tends to be a different mentality. Yeah. So we're very lucky. My brother and I had a really good, solid upbringing and a solid fundamental base to really to learn off, and then just went our own ways. I went into judo, and my brother was an international as well. He fought internationally, but then went into professional wrestling later. So that was quite interesting.
Okay. So if you can you just tell us about your journey into selection into the GB team and how that came about?
Well, it came about after this cadet European Championships, which I won, and then of course the team manager of the Olympic team in 1976. Well, in 1975, the team manager, the senior team manager, kind of noticed me, and he was bringing me forward. He took me away with the GB senior team to Japan, and so at 16 I was away with the senior team, which is really young and really early for a boy, for a man.
Sure.
Of a female, you could probably, they're 2 years in advance anyway, physically and mentally probably, and if not more. But then they are able to probably mix a little bit easier with the adults. But for a 16-year-old lad, and I was a lad really, but I was away there with the GB senior team. I went to the Senior European Championships, and he wanted me to go to the Olympics and in the Olympic trials, I lost on a split decision to the guy that went.
Right.
And he quite rightly went. I mean, he was physically 10 times stronger than me. But
sorry, Neil. What year was that? What year was that Olympics?
1976. That was just before the 76 Montreal Olympics. So I almost went. It was very, very close. We had a split decision, and he quite rightly went, and it was the right decision to make. And he fought for a medal at the Olympics. So I was up there round about at a very early age. So it kind of I got a really good team manager that kind of noticed potential and then brought me through. And then I fought the Olympic champion the year later in 77 European Championships. And I ran him very, very close as well. He was the world and Olympic champion at the time. So it was all kind of happening quick for me. So that was my real springboard into international competition at all levels.
Okay, so
at the highest level. Yeah.
Okay, so you wasn't selected for the in 1977. So which Olympics was it? Is it the one straight after that you represented?
I went to 80. Was silver medalist in the 80 Olympics. I lost on a split decision in the final. So I beat the Italian that I lost to. I beat in the European final a month earlier. So I beat him to win the European title a month earlier. Lost to him by split decision for the Olympics. That's a bit unfortunate. And then I was 84 Olympics, different weight category, and also silver medalist in the 84 Olympic Games. And that was more of a mistake. So it was, So the two Olympics that I went into, I was kind of world ranked number one at the time for both of them. But it's a funny one. The Olympics is one of those events that it can go for you and it can go against you.
I think there's
one of those things.
It's like all sports, and there's always a bit of luck involved with everything, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with our training and with our preparation, we try and reduce that luck as much as we can. You're right that it is. I mean, if you don't have the run of the play, sometimes, I mean, we see it, don't we, so often that there'll be a team absolutely dominating, and then against the run of play, the other team scores a goal, and you go, well, how did that happen? And it's not fair. But woulda, coulda, shoulda doesn't come into my line. I mean, it's just one of those things.
Yeah, no, sure. So going back to the Olympics then. So when you're in the Olympics, how many rounds generally do you have to go through to reach the final?
5 to reach the final, 6 matches to win it, win the Olympics, and to win any world title. I mean, it's 6 matches.
Okay, so and it's 5. Is it 5-minute rounds? Is that correct?
4 now.
4 now. Okay.
They're 4. They've equalised it for men and women. It's exactly the same. So it's 4 minutes for men, 4 minutes for women. But it's actual fighting time. So if it goes to time without a score on the board, then it will go into extra time or a golden score, what we call a golden score. And a golden score, as long as you're attacking within 30 to 40 seconds, as long as you're attacking and they're good attacks, then the fight can carry on. So we just had a 12-minute match last couple of weeks ago, and they were going hammer and tongue at it for 12 minutes. So that was pretty interesting.
Brilliant. So just talk us through a little bit more about sort of your sort of feelings and the thought processes and things that were going on when you was in those Olympics. Obviously, we've had another chap on who was in the Seoul Olympics in Taekwondo, and he was just telling us about the whole experience is so memorable, even from getting on the plane to being part of the GB team, to getting your tracksuit, to competing, having people shouting your name. Just sort of talk us through how the sort of feelings and how you felt during that time.
I think everybody is. I mean, people talk about being an Olympian, and that I think it's a great honour, isn't it, to be part of an Olympic team? And I think if you think that 90% of the people at the Olympic Games are there, to be part of an Olympic team and to go through the Olympic experience, For me, certainly, when I was I heard that people were not going into the Olympic Village. Competitors that were going for medals were not going into the Olympic Village because they didn't want to get dragged into the party side of the Olympic experience. And if you think about there's only 10% are there for medals, and there's only 2% are there for the gold medal. Absolutely there for the gold medal. So for me, very much, I did enjoy part of the Olympic experience, but then I had to take myself out of the party side of it to concentrate on what, was for me the most important thing, which was to win. I was there only for the gold medal, and, two silvers in the Olympics, good result, but I was completely mortified both times with the silvers, because the 1984 Olympic final, I was winning quite comfortably and made a mistake, a tactical error, and lost the match. And it was just, I was beside myself, So I think everybody has a different Olympic experience. And I think that, and I often talk about the Olympic tunnel syndrome. Everybody handles coming out there into this Olympic event as they talk about it in different ways. When you first step outside that Olympic tunnel and everybody stands up, or they don't, but you experience the fact that you're in the Olympic Games, then I think that some people handle it well and some people don't. And it's not, just because it's on home ground, it isn't an advantage for everybody, because it puts more pressure on certain people than it does on others. And I think that certain people can handle pressure, that kind of pressure, better than others, and they certainly do. And the Olympic Games, you can fight the same people as you fought in the Europeans or the World Championships in the Olympic Games, but it'll be a totally different match. Different experience and a different match,
and different pressures, I'd imagine. I mean, it must have been quite difficult going home from the '84 Olympics, knowing that you got so close. I suppose on a second occasion. I mean, how did you deal with that? Is it something that still goes through your mind now? Or is it something that
it's the word?
Yeah. You'd imagine it's something that will always live with you. It's always that, so close. But Olympics, silver is still awesome. But I suppose when you're living it and you're dreaming it and you really want that goal to be so close, it must be quite devastating.
Yeah, I mean, the mortified, like I say, is the word, really. And like you said, you still experience it, you still think about it, and I'm 60, and I'm thinking, it's still on my mind. We were just talking about it, my wife and I, just the other day, and we were just saying that it never leaves you. It never goes away, really. I mean, we put it to the back of our mind, and we learn to handle it and a lot better. And I did some photographs with Frank Vinegar, the guy in the second Olympic Games. Now, I mean, I fought him 4 or 5 times and beat him, and but made a mistake in that Olympic final. And credit to him, he took it and it made him. So it was one of those things that, I mean, I met his family a couple of weeks ago, and you're there and you think, well, it's never going to go away. It will never go away, but you learn to handle it a little bit different. And of course, you're a little bit older and able to, to treat it in a different way. My wife, she competed in the 96 Olympic Games for Canada for judo, and she had a complete meltdown in the Olympic tunnel. It just went away from her, and she doesn't know why. It's just one of those things. It's a strange one.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had a guest on earlier, and we were talking about, I'm an international competitor in Taekwondo, and I remember one particular year I just got into the Great Britain team. I'd beat my nemesis 4 times on the trot that year, and I thought, no problem at all. And I drew him first round, and he came out the blocks, and to be honest, he hit me with the first few things. I didn't know what happened, and he beat me, and that was my competition over, and I trained probably 3 years for it. And the feeling of disappointment, it's mortified. I think you're being too kind and polite, probably because it's a podcast. So I can imagine. But how, for me, I sat down on the end of the square and I thought the world, the world had imploded in my mind for that particular instance. Yeah. And, I had to get up, and that was my place in the team gone, because I thought I was nailed on to get into the team. So my event was over, before it even started. But I used that as a bit of a motivation to get back out and train harder. So what did you use as a bit of a motivation to get over it and then to get back onto the mat and then recompete the following Olympics?
Well, I came back and asked myself, are you happy with that? Obviously, I wasn't happy. And, don't you beat yourself up about it? But I thought if you fall off a horse, the best way is to get back on it, isn't it? And so I just did that. And I won the European title the year later. I beat, Vinica in that European Championships. And it wasn't the Olympic Games, but I guess you just pick yourself up, don't you? You dust yourself off, really, and you go for it. And I watch it now a lot because of my involvement with international judo now, and I commentate, and also I'm a referee supervisor. So I supervise a lot of the big matches, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. But and I see a lot of the matches leading up and qualification matches for the Olympic Games, and I see people on a 4-year preparation run for Olympic qualification, and then I see them on a second one. So they do well at one Olympics, and then I see them on a second run often, and of course it's entirely different because a little bit older, or they've got other things in their life as well as the sport, or just simply their game is not quite what it was. And then the odd time, and we've got some that have been trying to get to this Olympic Games that have just not quite made it, and just an absolute shadow of how they were 8 years ago in that Olympic cycle. Mm-hmm. And it's a shame, because we in a way don't know when to stop, and it's an adrenaline kick, isn't it? That we have this feeling, this euphoria, competing and winning, and then we want it again and again. It's like a drug, we just want, we love that feeling, and in the end, it's one more time. I just want one more before I finish, and then I'll be happy. But actually,
you'll never be happy, because that's your personality. No doubt, that same as myself, that drives us on to want to do different things, always to be at the top of the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, somebody said that to me the other day. They said you drive for that thing that will make you happy, but actually you will never be happy. You're absolutely right, because you get to that situation and then you want more. And not only that, if you don't achieve it, then you're never going to be happy. And often, there's very seldom do you see really good comebacks. I mean, they don't really happen, do they? But it's always, a downward spiral, which is really difficult to watch. And very few actually finish on top. Very few.
Unless you're George Foreman.
Yeah, unless you hear him. They're great stories, aren't they? And it doesn't happen very often. And sometimes they'll have a little bit of a comeback, and they'll have a bit more success. And then you just hope and pray that they finish before they get hurt.
Yeah.
And then of course, all of us, we discover other things in life. I mean, there are other things out there other than Taekwondo and Judo, and we love it. And people say to me now, you still love it, you're still in there,
still
you're
passionate,
still very heavily involved, it's your passion, but it's very much turned into my job now. And when I do a seminar, and I've got 100 people on the seminar, and all they want to talk about is judo. I mean, I had a really great bunch this weekend, first seminar at my new dojo here, and they were just so enthusiastic. And sometimes I look at them and I think, God, I'd do anything to just have that enthusiasm back again, but you kind of, it changes direction, and it changes, you change the way you feel about it, and I guess it's a natural progression.
It's just maturing, isn't it? You mature with your art or with your sport, and as you physically can't participate, I suppose you pull out the more dominant muscle, which is your mind, and you can use your mind in all sorts of ways within your sport.
Yeah, and you just change direction with it. Yes. I mean, I'm really glad that at my age I'm still able to demonstrate to a high level, and that's one of my motivations, is that I want to be able to, you see a lot of coaching people talking and guiding and so on and so forth, but I wanted to be able to demonstrate and to demonstrate to a high level. So if I've got Iliadis, who's an Olympic champion, coming to me with something, then I can physically demonstrate it. Sure. And that's, it's good for me to be able to do that, because I like to stay in shape anyway. And I think better, a picture always paints 1,000 words. I was talking to some people about it yesterday, and I think we see, that's not to say that you're not a good coach just because you can't demonstrate it, but it's just one of my motivations. I like to stay.
No, it does help.
It does help. Surely, yeah. Sure.
Neil, you mentioned obviously you finished competing, and some of the challenges changing in your mindset and your life and finding other interests. So, what role are you taking now in British Judo and World Judo?
Well, it's in World Judo. I work for International Judo, and I've been commentating for about 35 years. So I do all of the Grand Prix, the Grand Slams, the World Championships, and now the Olympic Games, the last 4 Olympics I've done. So Tokyo, I'll be there as commentator. But they've also brought 6 former Olympic and world champions in to a special group that work alongside the refereeing commission, so that we sit on all the major matches as former fighters, and we are part of the process. So, for example, referees, we help to guide the development and the interpretation of the rules. So if you've got a rule, for example, which is of a high-level interpretation, or it needs high level. So if you've got 2 Olympic champions coming together, something happens there and the referee doesn't really understand what's happened, then we can come in from the video analysis and say, it's not like that, this happened, So it's a really good development, actually, in World Judo. So, there are 6 of us that are working at all the major events. Quite interesting.
Okay, so it's interesting to hear about all the different developments with the sport then, really.
Yeah, it's amazing, because we have now referees and coaches coming together for joint seminars. So if we do any kind of... So, of course, you've always got coaches that will be pushing rules to the nth degree to get an advantage for their fighter. But the whole idea of our interpretation is that it's for positive play as opposed to playing towards the penalties. So, if you've got people playing towards penalty play and not trying to get the score, then if you're not careful, and we had it in 2 Olympic Games, we had a guy that played to negative play, played to penalties, and won an Olympic Games without scoring a point.
Right.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we said that can't happen again.
No.
So if you're playing for tactically from a negative point of view, then you will get penalised. And of course, it's shook a few of the coaches up, because then the coaches go, well, yeah, but this is all part of the game. But we say, well, it's all part of the game now. That you can still go for it on, and you can still try and score a point from a throw, and we want people to try and transition down to ground to score by an arm lock or strangle or whatever it is, but it's got to be from a positive point of view and not negative.
And I think from a spectator sport, it wants to be exciting to watch as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, otherwise it's a little bit like having Belgium playing Brazil in soccer, and Belgium just playing really defensively for 84 minutes and then getting the breakaway on the goal and scoring a single goal. And I don't know if you remember, but Belgium had that. That's exactly what their team were. They were they're known for being a defensive team.
Yeah.
And you have Brazil there doing all these magic skills, and all they're doing is firing at goal, and and it's not going in the net, which of course is the main point. But then, defense wins. Now, you could say, well, that's the name of the game. But do we want to see Brazil or do we want to see Belgium?
Exactly.
It's
like or playing safety shots in snooker consistently just to try and get your foul shot. And it's boring to watch, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and
exactly, just waiting for the mistake.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you've got somebody just waiting, so we want to see, there's nothing better, is there, than seeing Tyson and I don't know, the equivalent of George Foreman coming out to face each other and throwing bombs, because somebody's going to get knocked out.
Yeah.
It's getting that right balance and making it an enjoyable sport to participate in, but also to watch as well, and that's really how you can progress the sport. So just moving on slightly, just talk us through. You actually are. Well, you're probably our second guest. I count myself in this to be awarded an honour from the Queen. So I was not quite lucky enough to get an MBE. I only ended up with a QVCS for my efforts, but nevertheless. So talk us through your MBE, how you awarded it, and going through to the palace to receive it. What was that like?
Well, I received it in '83, so it was a long time ago now. But I think the MBE is something that you can get earlier on, isn't it? Because we tend to win major world honours fairly early, don't we? In competitive sport. So in other aspects, it takes them a lifetime of building up a resume of things they've done,
a lifetime achievement
to get something like that.
Yeah.
But and I was going to say that. So I got it early, and I remember receiving it through the post, and I thought that's magical. I'd probably be much more appreciative now. You know what I mean? But
sure.
It was an honour. I met the Queen, and it was just such an honour. But I guess at my stage of life now, it would be much. It would be not better received.
More appreciative, I suppose.
That's the right thing to say, but probably.
Yeah. Okay. Neil, do you know, it
was great.
Yeah, good. It's been absolutely fantastic having you on. We're nearing the end of the interview, and one of the things we always ask our guests is, what advice would you give to a younger self, knowing the things in life that you know now? So what one piece of advice would you have given a younger self?
That's a difficult one. I'm assuming that you're talking about judo-wise.
It can be in life as well.
Yeah.
Well, yours seem very much entwined, so...
I think that my advice to anybody is to get a really good skills base, and I think that with a really good skills base, then you're going to be then the results will come, and I think that that's what happened to me, and I think that the results will come, and also it will stay with you for so much longer, because if you've got a really good skills base, then you're able to do it for a lot longer, and so that was one of my main lessons. And the second thing is that just because you're down doesn't mean you're out. You've just got to bounce back, and you've just got to get up and go again.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good advice. I mean, certainly what you're saying about the skills. I mean, like I say, you and myself and Jackson, we've all been myself and Jackson been involved in the martial arts since we were sort of 3, 4, 5 years old, and having that skill set, later on in life allows you to do things, that you enjoy? For instance, I mean, we're doing this podcast and we're speaking to you, but it's only because, you know, we've been involved in the martial arts for all these years. We never dreamt 30 years ago that we'd be doing something like this. But again, it's still having that skill set that allows you to do those sort of things.
And and it gives you so many other opportunities as well. And I think that to being able to adapt, you know, when I'm coaching, one of the main points, advantages, is that if you're able to adapt to situations, I mean, we're both in combat sports. All of us are in combat sports. And you know what it's like. Somebody moves to the left or right or circle, or, you know, you've got to be able to adapt. And being able to adapt to certain situations enables us to succeed. So, and I think that that's a good lesson for life as well. You know, we've got to be able to adapt. So if somebody throws a spanner into the works for one thing doesn't mean that everything's over. You've got to adapt, change direction, and go again. And I think that that's what I've learned, because my wife and I, we're very much like that. You know, we just keep on going, you know, and it's not that we want to be millionaire. It'd be great to be, you know, multi-millionaires and for it to go that way. We're fairly comfortable. We've got a good life, a great life. And so we just think, well, we'll just keep on going and see if we can help as many people as we possibly can in our position, which is what we try and do as well.
Okay, and where can people find out more about, and our listeners find out more about judo, and particularly where you coach or you have your schools?
We've got online stuff. We've just opened up our own dojo, so I've just built a dojo. And
whereabouts is that?
It's here. It's where we live. So it's in part of our land, and so we've opened it up as a studio because we've got online coaching resources. So if you go to naeffectivefighting.com, or if you just dial Neil Adams Judo and .com, then you'll be able to access it, and it's got all the online coaching resources. Now, the whole idea was that we were able to record more online stuff easier by having our own dojo, because I had my own dojo for 22 years, and I had a lot of students through there, a lot of visitors, and it was specifically a skills dojo. Yeah. And a lot of people came for the skills. I mean, training camps and things like that, they were able to do all of their really hard training, sparring and stuff, their randori. But they came to me for the skills. So we just had our first seminar this weekend, was very specific, and some people came from the Netherlands, and it was just a real success. So we're going to have a lot more. Any information that anybody needs, just go to naeffectivefighting.com.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Neil. We really appreciate speaking to a legend as yourself, a living legend, should I say. Like I say, it's been really great to have you on, and I know it's great for us because, like again, we've not really had anybody from the judo world really. So again, we've got quite a few listeners from that background. So I think that will really be good for them. And
hey, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you. Thanks for being so kind.
No, thank you, Neil. Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your listening platform. It would be awesome if you could also leave us a review. We really appreciate your valued feedback.
Also, check out our website, themotivatedmartialartist.com. We also have a YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook page and Facebook group. All the links are available on the show notes below.
We'd like to thank again our show sponsors, skillsconnect.co.uk, the world's leading children's development programme for martial arts. If you're a martial arts school owner or instructor and are looking for some inspiration, ideas or drills for your children's classes, make sure you check the skills out.